Hello, everybody. Welcome into Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodities sector. My name is Jesse Day. Before we dive in, standard disclaimer, nothing here is investment advice. Do your own due diligence. And today's guest is the CEO of Power Metallic, a Canadian exploration company focused on advancing the NISK project area, where they have discovered a high-grade nickel, copper, platinum group elements, gold, and silver system. We're going to be talking about all those metals and diving into the details of what Power Metallic has been up to. Terry Lynch, it's great to have you back on the show.
Hey, Jesse, good to see you, and happy summertime.
Yes, happy summertime. It is heating up here in Serbia. I want to talk about several of the metals which Power Metallic is operating within. You're a polymetallic company, as I mentioned, with your NISK project. You've got a lot of other projects worldwide as well. We're going to dive into that. But first, I would like to start off with the gold sector and get your thoughts there. What inning of this gold bull market do you think we're in at present? And what are the catalysts you're watching that you think could potentially take us higher?
Yeah, I think it's early innings. Like definitely first third, of the game, maybe even the first inning. I mean, we were flatlined there for a long time in the gold, and now that it broke out, from the 2000 range, and it's moved quite rapidly. So, and it's basically in response to the flat out massive overprinting of fiat, right? And finally, central banks are driving it. Despite everyone's commentary, I believe that central banks are the ones that are really driving this push. And of course, retail has caught on. So the more and more investment dollars are pouring into owning the precious metal physically, and I feel like the bad guys have lost control of gold. They kept it manipulated it for many years, and now I think it's sort of floating, and I think it's going to tend to float higher. I mean, it's nothing; it's never going to go up in a straight line, but I certainly think you could go long gold anywhere here, and you're still going to do very well. So I'm a big gold bull.
Yeah, you said the bad guys have lost control. I just want to pull on that thread quickly and then jump to silver. And this kind of connects the two because there's a lot of obviously discussion and proof that has emerged over the years about manipulation of the silver markets. Gold, much the same way through futures contracts. What are the signs you're seeing that makes you believe that those who have been manipulating the price of gold are losing control? And how do you think that whole situation will unwind?
Yeah, I mean, I think basically gold used to trade within that range, and it would get up, and then beat it back down, and then it would stay like it had a long flag pattern, I guess, and then it finally broke out. So when that happened, and it's sustained the breakout, it's tested it a couple times, it's sustained it. So I feel like if they could have rejected it, they would have, and they weren't able to. So, I mean, again, I'm not a great technician on this. Most I get this from talking to Eric Sprott, and he tells me, his views. And I mean, Eric is certainly one of the more knowledgeable guys in that sector, and he believes that that's been unhooked, and silver is still hooked, but he feels it's about to come unhooked, and so I think that's why goals run, quicker, more sharply, and silver's probably still playing catch up. The ratios on the silver historic relationship to gold is way out of whack, and one would think that either gold's coming down or silver's going to rise rapidly. And I'm sort of on the other side. I believe it's silver's going to really strike out here. You can even see it somewhat in the platinum palladium. It was like just bouncing on the bottom there for the longest time. It's directly implicated in our area of exploration. When I was talking with Eric, he said Power Metallic, what's your breakup? Between copper, nickel, and PGEs and precious metals. I said, well, I think we've really talked about it being ultimately a third, a third, a third. And he says, well, what's it in the line zone? I said, well, at last we looked, it was 55% copper, 30% PGs, 50% gold and silver. He said, you should run it at current numbers. And we did subsequent to that conversation. And it was like we're actually at 55% precious metals. So like 40% PGEs and 10% gold, 5% silver. So it shows you how moving precious metals prices can really drive economics of some of these polymetallics, etc. So it's pretty interesting, and it seems like early days. Like if you look at the PGEs, PGMs, depending on where you're at, how you view the sector. They bounced off. I think when we use our copper equivalent, we use 950 for the PGEs. Now you'd be using probably 1250. So it's up by a third. So it's pretty serious, and it's probably early days in that breakout. I think that could easily go to a couple thousand. So it's pretty heady times for the sector.
Yeah, well, let's just touch on silver a little bit more. Then I want to talk about platinum group metals because silver has now broken and remained consistently above $35 for nearly a month now, which is fairly historic. Now, of course, adjusted for inflation, if we were to go back to previous all-time highs, we're looking at triple-digit silver. What are your thoughts currently on the health of the silver sector? And you mentioned that when you spoke to Eric Sprott, he said that the silver sector has not yet been unhooked from that manipulation, but he's starting to see signs it's slowing down. So, and any other color you could provide on that would be great too.
Yeah. So I mean, clearly silver looks to want to break out, and I expect the breakout will happen sometime, in this quarter. So I guess we're not quite there. We'll be there on July 1st. So that's tomorrow, I think, or the next day. So that I think Q3, I think we'll see the breakout in silver, and I just think there's a lot of pent up energy. Everything from central bank buying to heavy retail buying to industrial support that will eventually break the back here. Plus, there's from what I hear, there's also movement in the commodity space to get to blockchain backed trading on the commodities. That happens, then all this paper BS will be diminished greatly, and if that happens, wow, who knows what could happen to silver? It could be, I mean, nothing goes straight up again, but easily gets to 50 and probably gets to 100. Sounds crazy, I know, but I truly think that type of move is going to happen in silver.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that one. Let's talk about platinum group metals because despite a pretty big 1 day drop at the end of last week, platinum has been on quite a run. Now, a lot of platinum's use industrially is in catalytic converters, a technology that a lot of people have written off, believing that EVs are going to dominate the car market, so we won't need platinum for cat converters anymore. How do you currently see the supply demand dynamics for platinum, and what do you make of the recent price action?
Well, I mean, we've been on a supply shortage for the last several years that's been drawing down the supply from the stores of the metal. So we knew that at some point it was going to start to rip. So it clearly made its first move now. So I think that you're just fundamentally, you look at where platinum mostly comes from. It mostly comes from South America, or not South America, but South Africa. Those mines are really getting long on the tooth. A lot of problems with it. Grades are going down. Costs are going up. Supply of power is a major issue. It's probably only viable in there because of the very cheap labor rates, but there's issues with that. So it's a pretty dangerous supply situation, and there's not really been a lot of new platinum palladium mines coming on stream. It's been years. So it's mostly a byproduct, as you know. So I think that the supply crunch is real in that space, and if you look at the cost of production, not even sure these numbers, if it covers the cost of production, it would just be flat. Certainly wouldn't justify investing in a brand new platinum mine, solely the platinum palladium on these numbers. So prices have to go higher to justify new production. So I think and then you look at historically, often cases platinum traded north of gold, as a precious metal, and here we are, so it's trading a third of gold or something. It seems in that range, 35, 40%. So there's strengths to me that there's a lot of people that are looking at buying platinum as a cheaper version of gold. If you want to hold something hard, they're saying, hey, maybe my better leverage right now is to buy platinum versus gold, or silver, I think as well. So I think that's somewhat driving it. So I think there's and then the platinum and palladium there's some new uses cases for it coming in the green economy, in the hydrogen world for sure. And the reality is we're going to be driving gas cars in 30 years, and it's going to be a lot of them. So this is, will there be more EVs? Yes, there will be more EVs, but they will not be explicitly only EVs. There's no way that infrastructure could be built to take care of just to deliver that power that would have to happen. That's just never been thought through enough. So while we're obviously in the supporting the EV business and what we do, I still think it'll grow, but it's not going to eliminate the oil and gas or the combustion engine. So as a result, of course, we'll need these products for a long, long time. So it's just like, is oil and gas going to go away? The answer is no, it's not going to go away. It's going to prosper as well. We need all forms of energy, especially with this AI, the consumptions of AI, the energy that it's going to drive is really crazy. So yeah, I think that they miscalculated the early demise of the platinum palladium industries because of the combustion engine, and now they're going to pay the price.
Very well said. I want to talk about nickel for a moment here as well. What are the major tailwinds that you currently see driving the nickel sector, and any light you could shed on the current supply demand dynamics as you see them for the metal?
Yeah, nickel is sort of like the struggling brother. Obviously, the Indonesian situation, they're the driving force in nickel pricing. And, I suspect what happened is that, it really crushed a lot of the higher cost nickel supplies, New Caledonia, some of the ones in Australia. So, and once those mines go out of production, they're not coming back anytime soon. So that you've taken big chunks of overhang out of the market, so that you're helping the supply demand dynamic with that. And then the other thing that's happening in Indo is, I see that they're actually paying attention to some of their environmental rules and restricting supply there as because of some of the huge environmental issues they face with the Chinese dominated supply chains developed in Indonesia to process the laterite nickel into MHP and stuff. So I suspect nickel's always been the most cyclical of commodities, and it's in a low cycle. But again, the driving force in nickel is basically industrialization, because it's use of stainless steel, right? 65% of the market is stainless steel. So electrification and industrialization are the driving forces for nickel. And one would see growth in both those sectors for the foreseeable future. So I suspect that it'll take longer for the nickel market to come back on the side, but ultimately there'll be I know now that people are looking at for good nickel investments, thinking it's a contrarian play. So, we see that out there.
Well, let's discuss how Power Metallic fits into the picture. It's been a while since I last had you on. We got a lot of new viewers since then. Start by giving us an overview of the company.
Yeah, so basically, Power Metallic is its flagship project is a project called the NISK project, and it's in northern Quebec. Think of it as just a little bit south and east of James Bay. We're blessed by great infrastructure, so we can literally drive off the major highway, which is called Route North, and drive right to the site, right to the rig. So that's awesome. We're also across the street from a Hydro-Quebec substation, so we have power lines on the property, so power and roads are there. So that's a really big plus. We're about 8 kilometers outside the town of Nemaska. Nemaska is a major regional center, has a regional airport. It's also home of the James Bay Cree. So the other thing that Quebec has done an amazing job of, is they've done a great job of working with the First Nations and partnering with them and educating with them on how mining is massively beneficial for their society. So as a result, we've been, with that great relationship with the James Bay Cree. I'm heading up there in a couple of weeks to meet with them again. I meet with them every 6 months, update them on the project. So they're very supportive. So it's always good. Community risk is a big risk in mining. So having the local First Nations on the side is very, very important. So that's the case. And then the other thing that we like about Quebec so much is we've raised a lot of money to advance our exploration. Uh, and pretty much we've raised it, using some of the most amazing financial incentives in the planet. So in the last round, in end of February, we raised $50 million with Robert Friedland and Rob McEwen were the leads, and with the big mining funds. And basically, we got a 1.95 multiple on our exploration dollars. So about 80% of the raise was exploration. So we got 283 a share, and the investors paid $1.45. And then on the hard portion of the investment was about 20%. They paid $1.45. So on average, we got about 250. So you think you got 250 and the investor paid $1.45. That's fantastic for everyone, right? I mean, the investors got to leverage their cash in terms of de-risking them going forward. It means our existing investors got diluted at 250 instead of $1.45. So it was great for the existing guys. So we've done that several times now, successfully higher prices. So it's been phenomenal from a, capital structuring perspective for the company to create value for our shareholders, which is the business we're in. So now we've got, that, $50 million in the till, and we're basically ramping up our exploration. We moved from 2 rigs. We're scaling to 6. Right now we've got 4 on the property drilling. So we just to refresh, we have an MRE on our nickel project, because it started off historically, just to bring everyone up to speed. When we initially probably had our conversation, we had probably just reported on our nickel 43-101. It was about 7.1 million tons. Probably it's around 8.5 million now. Probably about a 1.25% nickel EQ. Reasonably high grade for nickel. In hunting for more nickel, we stepped out 5.5 kilometers away to a similar looking structure, drilled it, and did not find nickel. We found instead a massive copper sulfide. This became the Lion Zone, and it became a bit of a historic discovery. Hannam, in January, Hannam Partners, out of a really good base metals, precious metals mining investment bank out of London, suggested that we had like 9.5 million tons of 7% copper equivalent, at the then commodity prices, so that's pretty impressive. That's like unbelievably rich rock. So we believe it's grown since then. and what it did is it transformed, this nickel sulfide project into what's called an orthomagmatic discovery. And these orthomagmatic discoveries like this are quite rare, maybe only 20 in the history of the world. There's some of the bigger ones. So think of Voisey's Bay, 140 million tons. The granddaddy of them all is Norilsk, which is like a couple billion tons in Russia. Sakatti, another big discovery from Anglo American in Finland, is the most current. That was done about 18 years ago. So now us at NISK. So the interesting part about this is that when we made the discovery, we realized, wow, we have a polymetallic, and we didn't really have any expertise in polymetallic discoveries. So we reached out to Dr. Steve Beresford, who had been chief geo at First Quantum, then at MMG and IGO, all 3 big polymetallic discoveries. Done an amazing job there. And his only mission in life is to find the next Norilsk, so to speak. And he's only looking for these orthomagmatic discoveries because they are literally the best mine type to discover in the world. They're the most economic, quickest to market, most lucrative, the best mines you can find. So I contacted Steve through LinkedIn, of all places, and eventually we connected. And he came over and got up to the site, and he realized, wow, we sort of had the tiger by the tail. Eventually, he became a board member. So he's now our thought leader on the geology side. And we put together a bit of a dream team to explore this. And so we've got dream team on the science side between Steve and GeoVector, who are handling the drilling and the scaling of the exploration. And then we got the the Friedlands and McEwens and Reinhardts of the who's who of the mining world in, and the big mining funds, and we're cashed up. So don't need cash. We're drilling aggressively, and it's all about how big is this thing going to be. So to give you some context, there's in our presentation, which is on our site, and happy to go through that with you. But it basically has this triangle slide, and it has, if you think of it as noble metals or PGEs at the top of it with gold and silver, and then nickel in the left-hand corner, copper on the right. This is sort of the matrix of a polymetallic. And then we're sort of in the center of it because we're sort of equal parts of somewhat, but super high grade. And the interesting part about that is that of these 20 discoveries, if you found 1,000,000 tons of copper sulfide in these deposits, typically on average you find 5 million tons of nickel sulfide. So nickel, copper, PGE, standard stuff like we had at NISK. So right now we're about 1.5 copper to 1 nickel, soon to be almost 2 copper to 1 nickel. So what does that mean? Well, probably means we're going to find a boatload more nickel underneath. The way to visualize these deposits, they tell me, is that think of the palm of your hand, and the palm is your nickel sulfide. It was the mothership, and it spawned these fingers, the line zone being one, and we expect to find others, and these become super high charged copper sulfide verticals, and they're like chutes. And they're super concentrated and very lucrative. And so the big win in polymetallics is to find these chutes and drill down to a much deeper nickel sulfide that is made economic because you're probably being paid to drill down to it. So that's what we're trying to sort of prove over this next 18 months with this $50 million. So it's exciting times for us. We've had we were the top performing mining stock in Canada last year. And we're off to a decent start this year. We had gone up, had a pretty sharp rise at the start, and then when the Trump shenanigans hit, it sort of backed everything off, and we're sort of actually trading at this point. I think just under issue was $1.45, so you can buy it. I think it's $1.20, $1.25, or something like that right now. So it's a hell of a time to be looking at it. And it's a good time to get the story out. So we're thankful for the opportunity to spread the word.
Yeah, great summary. Now, aside from the NISK project, you have several others around the world. So outside of NISK, what are you most focused on right now? What makes you excited about those other projects?
Yeah, so we really have like two, core project packages. One, the most recent one we just announced, is in Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We just announced that we got a huge tract over there, where we have 100% ownership of, and we've set up this subsidiary, Power Metallic Arabia. It was attractive for a couple of reasons. One, people don't probably realize it, but the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is probably the last big spot on Earth that's not been explored really completely. You can always do more exploration everywhere, but we're talking pretty much virgin ground. They've explored it for oil, but not for mining. Yet, if you look at the Arabian, continental shelf, there's tons of mines in Sudan and Egypt and all over there, but virtually nothing in the kingdom. So the kingdom has made a very big decision to make mining its number 3 industry by 2035, with the Saudis throwing massive fiscal support to that concept that only the Saudis could do because they've got all that oil cash. So they've done some pretty amazing things structurally to encourage investment by everything from just digitizing the information and then doing airborne over the whole country, and then doing they'll be doing borehole EM systematically over the country, and they're doing a lot of great work, I think, to advance stuff, and they've got pretty significant incentives. So for every $4 million you spend on a project, they'll give you back 2. So that's directly inspirational. The other thing that they did for us is they said, look, what they're looking for is explorers. They want people that they're not looking for land bankers. They want people that go in there and actually have a vision as to how to properly explore something, and we'll spend the money and put the money in the ground and let's see what's there. If you do find a discovery there and ultimately bring it to feasibility stage, to give you an idea of the support, they will give you 75% of the mine construction costs at 1% as a loan. Crazy. So that's,
Wow.
pretty exciting stuff. So as a result, the other thing that they suggested they would do for us, and they have done, is they've introduced us to the top 5 family offices in Saudi and said, hey, we want these guys to invest in mining, and we want them to have good partners to work with. So please talk to these people and have a conversation. So we're having those conversations, and I expect that we would have do a joint venture in that sub. So where a lot of our exploration risk would be defrayed for the first several years with our new partner. So it was sort of like, obviously, we're a small company, and we're focusing on NISK for obvious reasons. It's the biggest fish in town, and it's an amazing discovery. But probably over the next 12 to 24 months, we know how big it is, and we're already, the majors are watching. I mean, ultimately, these things tend to go and are acquired by majors, or we develop it in a joint venture with a major or somebody of that ilk, because these things are so lucrative. You might not want to move off it so quickly. And we actually just expanded. We just acquired another almost quadruple our land package in the area, because we see is likely to become a area play, not just a single mine. So there is that. But nonetheless, there will be a moment where we'll not be the driving force behind NISK. We'll be hopefully a partner still in the deal with a major bringing it to production, and then well, next step could be that's when maybe at that point our Saudi Arabian things will be up in speed. The first year or so in Saudi is just a lot of exploration work. So in terms of gathering data, getting data shot, and stuff like that. So there's not a lot of heavy lifting. So it doesn't really take a ton of our management time. So, but that's a process. So you always have, think of it in the manufacturing. You got to put stuff in the front, and then eventually it comes out the back. But not all comes out at once. Other than Saudi, the other thing that we have a spin-out company called Chilean Metals, and it has 2 major property packages, one in Chile that we have done a lot of work on, and another in BC that we've done some work on, but expect to do more. It's in the Golden Triangle, very attractive, not yet drilled ever. Copper gold package, very significant intercepts. That we had done on sampling, half-ounce gold at surface, several instances. Scotty Resources just north of us. Silverado is just south of us. So in the area where a lot of gold and silver have been discovered, so very prospect rich. So we're quite bullish on that. And then on our Chile project, we basically had some pretty serious intercepts, like 40 meters or 0.7% copper. Hadn't found the source from it. We're literally border on the Candelaria mine, which was like 1 billion tons. So in the area of giants and stuff like that, and we have a very big land package there. Fleet Space, which had done a lot of work for us in advancing NISK, has done a bunch of work for us in Chile that looks pretty prospective. So we're anxious to get drilling on that. So that'll happen in the fall. So again, separate company run by a separate management team, but we maintain a 50% interest, and our Power Metallic shareholders have the other 50%. So pretty stoked about that as well. So lots going on, but our focus still remains to be NISK.
Yeah, absolutely a lot going on. I love the diversification, both geographically and also with the different metals that you're working with. Is there anything we haven't covered so far? Anything else you want to emphasize to potential shareholders of Power Metallic?
No, I think the one point I would say to your audience is, and if they're interested in commodities, good for them, because they should be. We're about to go on a massive commodity boom, and you can play the real commodity. And I think that's part of it, but I think there's at some point it will make sense to get into a diversified package of juniors in this space, at least for a segment of your investment, because that'll have the biggest alpha. And I think there's a number of asymmetric opportunities out there. I think Power Metallic is one of them, where there's always downside to these things, but there's not a lot of downside to where we're at right now. I don't think. I think relative to the upside, with the fact that we're already cashed up, the fact that we've got such significant smart money in the deal multiple times, And the fact that we've already, these assays, you can't make them up. These are historic numbers, and it's in a very great jurisdiction. I think jurisdictional risk will become more of an issue these days, and having our basis in Canada and Quebec will be certainly behoove us. So I think it's the fact that we're trading beneath their most recent issue is fairly standard. Like in the summertime, you find, Jesse, lots of softness for whatever reason. People go sell in May and go away. That seems to be the trend. It's often the best of times to pick up pieces and start your position in deals, because they tend to trade down, and then all of a sudden you come back and you have a rip roaring fall. And I think it could be a exciting fall for the sector, and we're certainly going to be exciting for Power Metallic.
Great. Well, I'll put a link in the description below to the Power Metallic website as well as social media so people can follow along with the company. Terry, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with the audience.
Jesse, always a pleasure to be with you. Hope you have a great day. Cheers.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.